Okay, so next up we have Ryogi Shiki Summer. Now, she is going to be our 5-star here on Banner 2, and she is really interesting. For start, because she's also referred to as the Jade Rabbit or Moon Rabbit, and that is got its own implications to begin with as well, but also because she is coming to us as a Moon Cancer, which I think a lot of people would have probably not expected for Shiki, but there are some interesting aspects to Shiki's kit. Now, Shiki is going to be our newest addition to the game that has the ability to change their NP type. And we've seen now a couple of units do this over the years, including a lot of similarities to another unit like Ptolemy, who is actually going to be coming out soon here on NA. So paying close attention to her, we can definitely denote that that is going to make this a very versatile unit. However, this also means the devil's going to be in the details. You guys really got to know her kit, and we're going to do our best job to educate you guys in that today. So let's start by getting into the raw stats that Shiki has. Then we'll go through the kit. Then we'll go through her actual damage numbers and basically refund numbers. So as well as comparing to other units. So let's go ahead. Let's get started right here. You guys can see she actually only has about 10k attack. This is concerning, at least to a immediate degree. So just because a unit does not have good attack does not make the unit like bad, but this is fairly low for a 5-star. In fact, it is one of the lowest. So this is something to be concerned about. This means that basically, while she does not have her steroids in play, Shiki's cards for a 5-star are not going to hit very hard. So keep that in mind as we move through this kit. Her HP value, though, is 15.4k. This is actually stellar. This is really, really good. This makes her pretty beefy, and it's going to be hard to take her down. Her star absorption is only 51. Again, it is a Moon Cancer, not really known for it. Her star generation is 15.3, which is at least all right. Her NP charge attack is only 0.44. This may be a little bit concerning, but she is an arts unit, so we do have a lot of options there. Her NP charge defense is 3%. Her death rate is only 0.8, which is actually very, very low and good for you. The alignment is chaotic good in stages 1 and 2, and neutral balanced in stage 3, so you can maneuver that around to take advantage of various support buffs. Her gender is female. Her basic traits are Anima Elish Nullification, Existence Outside the Domain, Fairy Tale Servant, Hominide Servant, Humanoid, Normal Servant, and Summer Mode Servant. But then from there, in stage 1, she is Animal Characteristic, Bunny Servant, and Living Human. In stage 2, she is only Living Human. In stage 3, she is Animal Characteristic Servant, Bunny Servant, and Immune to Pigify. So again, you can maneuver this around to utilize her in whatever ascension you want. The good news is, unlike how we've seen maybe with some of the prior units like Olga, Ryōgi Shiki is not going to be tied to a specific ascension form for her kit. So that will be nice. This will only affect traits, and that's something that you can hinge on. So basically, now we get to the deck here for her. She is single buster, double arts, double quick. Nothing too crazy about this. We do have the capability with her arts and P to form triple arts chains, and we still do have 2 quick cards here for decent NP generation. At least the hit counts on both of those are above average. The hit count on the buster card and the extra attack, though, are perfectly average, which is definitely mirroring the 4-star that we saw on the same banner. I do have a tendency to think that the devs actually like have a template that they copy paste over, and we noticed that because several units don't actually change their like hit counts or NP charge very much, and it's very, very interesting once you start analyzing a bunch of servants to notice this. Take a look at her first skill, though. So right off the bat, she has Misguised with Death Perception. This is actually pretty much the same as her other forms, except it's just better. And basically, this one starts out with ignores Anti-Purge Defense, aka she has Solemn Defense Pierce, which is definitely a contentious topic in the community at the point in time, but I would say this is interesting that she is yet another unit that has it, and she gets it for 3 turns. Now, the good news is, again, if you want to battle someone like this, you just take evasion, so there is an easy out, but this is an interesting thing that she does not have normal Invuln Pierce, so there will be something that you'll have to watch out for. She increases her own arts performance from there by 30% over 3 turns, assuming you lure the skill, and then will increase her own instant kill success rate for 3 turns by a whopping 200%. This is actually a very, very nice amount, and definitely something that will be good for her in the long run. From here, she also has a critical star bomb of 20 stars, definitely a little bit of power creep here for an arts unit, and certainly welcome as it will help her ability to land crits. All of this on a 5-turn skill cooldown, keeping it relatively low and meaning that with the 5th append, we can get this down to even 4 turns. For active skills on her 2nd skill here, we have the Dancing Under the Full Moon skill. This one is the one you really need to pay attention to because this is where it gets hairy. This skill allows her to change what type of noble phantasm she has. She starts out in the sun sort of stance for herself. The sunlight, the under the sun buff basically is what she's going to start out with. That makes her single target. The under the moonlight buff makes her AoE. Now that you understand that, let's read through again. Basically, you get to select one of these 2 options. Option number 1, under the moonlight buff. It is unremovable. This will change her NP damage type to AoE. It will also remove any under the sun buff that you have and will charge her own NP gauge by up to 50%. From there, will grant herself debuff immunity for 3 turns. Or option number 2, which grants herself the under the sun buff. Unremovable. Changes her own NP damage type to single. So again, she would already have this if you had started her out as single target, so you might be able to delay activating this skill, but it's up to you. Basically, this will remove any under the moonlight buff and will charge her own NP gauge by 50%. And then from there, instead of granting debuff immunity, it will increase her own buff removal resistance for 3 turns by up to 100%. This is a very, very strong skill. The interesting thing to denote is that the under the sun and under the moonlight buff do not expire. So when you make this choice, you are stuck with it until you can get back to this skill again. Keep that in mind because, as I mentioned before, she starts out as single target. So you might not want to activate this skill until you're either ready to change her into AoE or you just need the charge and you're trying to keep her in single target. So understand that this skill has a lot of impact on the way Shiki Summer is going to play. This skill is on a 6-turn cooldown. So you do need to be a little bit wary about that because once you make a choice, you're not going to get it back very fast. This does, though, mean that pairings with other units with cooldown reduction, a la Tamamo Caster, might actually be really good here, as this would allow her maybe the capacity to be able to get back to this skill a little bit faster. Again, I also mentioned the 5th append being an option, and certainly something like Atlas Mystic Code can also be utilized. Or again, just any unit that you're taking alongside that has cooldown reduction. Her 3rd skill here now gets a little bit hairy, as this one is going to be one that changes depending on which buff you are currently under the effect of. If you are under the sun, aka you have the sunlight status, you are going to increase your own attack for 3 turns by basically up to 30%. It will also increase your own critical damage for 3 turns by up to 50%. And it will recover your own HP by up to 3,000 and reduce your own skill cooldowns by 1. So again, this is something where you maybe want to utilize this after you use the 2nd skill, but depending on your circumstances, maybe before. Meanwhile, if you have the moonlit status, this will also increase your own attack for 3 turns by 30%, but then instead of getting critical damage, you now get MP damage for 3 turns. Again, this is the AoE form of her. It will also grant herself invincibility for 2 attacks, 3 turns. So only really the AoE form is going to get hard defense here, something that you can actually tank an NP with. It will also overcharge her own NP by 2 stages for 1 time 3 turns. So no cooldown reduction, but instead we get overcharge. And again, this skill also is going to be on a 6-turn cooldown. Just understand, as you have the cooldown reduction on the sunlight side, you can lower this even more. For passive skills here, she has magic resistance A, which is just a solid 20% debuff resistance, independent action EX, which is 12% extra critical damage, presence concealment D, which is only 4% extra critical star generation rate, and then a false existence outside the domain. This gains her 5 critical stars every turn, and this is basically what makes her start out as the sunlight buff, so under the sun buff at the beginning of battle and when continuing. While she has under the moonlight, though, it will give her quick arts and buster up of 6%. So it is an interesting thing to denote that this basically only is going to give a buff to the under the moonlight effect, but it will start you out under the sun. With regards to her Append skills, something like mana loading may be very valuable to you depending on what you're doing, because again, this is a unit that's going to be changing their NP types. Refund won't necessarily be the best at times, especially because it'll be a little bit wonky with how you can utilize the charge skills. So getting any amount of charge that you can, probably a good thing on Shiki. The 5th Append also can be really strong, as we mentioned before, because of the ability to maybe get back to skills faster. It's going to be important if you're in a challenge environment, but also maybe just if you screw up a run in a normal farming scenario. From there, we have the 3rd Append that is anti-archer attack damage aptitude. This one, to me, not necessarily worth, but I leave it up to you. Extra attack finesse, critical damage, always useful, but again, the choice is yours. So to me, I'd go with the 2nd Append and the 5th Append before I'd go with any of the other options, but that is pretty standard nowadays. Taking a look at her Noble Phantasm, her NP is actually the exact same, both AoE and single target. The only difference is the scaling. So again, if she has under the sun status, meaning she is single target, she will deal damage to one enemy with a 4-hit single target arts NP. It will deal 150% extra damage, basically super effective damage, to enemies that are sky attribute. You'll have a 60% chance to instant kill them, that will be further modified by the first skill's effects, and then charge the party's NP gauge by 10% after the NP goes out. Her overcharge effect increases her own NP damage, but only for 1 turn, though it does activate first. So again, 20% on that. So if you're pairing with like an Oberon, you can boost that even more. The AoE NP is the exact same under the moonlight status. Deals damage to all enemies, super effective against Sky, 60% chance to instant kill, and 10% refund after the fact. Same thing, 20% NP damage up for 1 turn, activating before damage as the overcharge effect. So like I said, exact same. The only difference is the actual scaling that determines whether or not it is an AoE or single target NP. So based off that, what then makes sense for Shiki in terms of craft essences? Well, let's start out by looking at her refund. Essentially, if we take 2 times Castoria with a Sun Shiki, so what do I mean? A single target Shiki, and Oberon, and a level 100 Black Grail with a Neo Plug suit versus neutral enemies, you guys can actually see Shiki can get back to about that 30% breakpoint against a single enemy with 1 Castoria skill 2 at 2 overkill hits. Kind of a little bit difficult to get 2 overkill hits on a 4-hit MP. You can definitely do it, but that is a decent chunk of damage. But if you have both Castoria skill 2s on the target at the time, and the reason why we're differentiating here is because the refund does matter. So you might not always have the capacity, like again, if you're running like single Castoria skill 2 and then like your mana loading append, that might be that nice even 40%. But maybe you delay one of the effects, one of the skill 2s until turn 2 or something like that. So this can impact refund. But as you guys can see, if we have both in play, then 0 out of 4 overkill hits, basically we're guaranteed to get at least the 30% refund. So that's good to denote. This does, however, include the 10% refund after her NP that is already baked in. If we do the exact same thing, basically versus AoE targets, we're looking at double Castoria, Oberon, Black Grail, Neo Plug Suit, neutral enemies. Again, only one skill 2 from a Castoria and the 10% charge included. We get back to over 50% charge at 0 overkill hits. So refund there is a little bit good. Realistically speaking, you could expect something about in the 60s on refund, assuming you're not using a like third support like Nero Bride or something like that. So interesting to denote. So where does that leave her? Well, again, if we could see, you guys can already detect that there are some scenarios because those were neutral. So what about Berserkers? Well, you're going to be utilizing Shiki a ton against neutral enemies as a Moon Cancer, but Berserkers are also a very common enemy type, and Berserkers have the worst NP gain out of all enemies that you can hit. This makes things a little bit spicy. As a single target with double times Castoria, basically with only one Castoria skill 2, you would not be able to get to that 30% breakpoint, even with maximum overkill hits against Berserkers. That's going to be a concerning thing. With 2 times Castoria against the same exact scenario, but now we have the second Castoria skill 2, we can get there, but it's basically what it was before on the neutral one, where now we need 2 overkill hits to do it. It's possible, but it definitely would be a lot for some scenarios. Similarly, if we are looking at Berserkers with an AoE option, it's the exact same scenario against 3 enemies. Basically, just a single overkill hit would be enough, which we will get literally just from killing the enemies. So that would get you back to the 50% there. That makes it a lot more easy to work with. So what do I recommend for Shiki? Obviously, like, if you're worried about refund, a 50% C, like, again, Ocean Flyer or Heavenly Demon Princess, like, there are numerous options that you can go with that would be quality for her. But I think Black Grail and anything like Black Grail is going to be your go-to. Just maximizing damage output. This is an arts unit. It's definitely going to be what you want. So do keep in mind, you might want things like an Invuln Pierce CE, since she does not carry that. She has Solemn Defense Pierce. So if you come across something that has dodge, you're going to want Invuln Pierce or Sure Hit to allow you through. Obviously, something like Honey Lake can be good, or even, again, various other Invuln Pierces can be an option for you. So it really just depends, craft essence wise, as to what you want to run with. But how is Shiki's damage? Well, let's take a look at this. Sun mode, again, single target mode, Shiki, self buff only. We're actually looking at about 47k, almost 48k at NP1 neutral. Super effective against Sky. That number jumps. We're almost at 79k neutral under her own power. At NP2, these numbers jump even further with 63k and 105k respectively. Looking at her in a sort of one-shot scenario. So this is just, hey, we've got a single target. How much damage can we amp? How much can we get out of her for just a one-turn scenario? Well, this is going to be now using supports, Black Grail, Mystic Codes, things like that. Still neutral numbers, but we're looking at almost 500k here at NP1. NP1 versus Sky, we're looking at 823k. So a lot more damage output. You can see just the raw power of a super effective modifier. NP2, you're looking at 665. NP2 versus Sky, over 1 million neutral damage. Definitely a solid boss killer at that point. Which is interesting, because I've heard a lot of people say, like, her damage is not that strong and that good today, and I was actually surprised by that, because not only is she damage bonus in the event, but you also literally have scenarios where she can just absolutely pop off still and do good solid damage. And remember, these are neutral numbers. You can definitely get to effective numbers against things like Berserkers, or again, something like an Avenger should you encounter it. So in that regard, Shiki will definitely be a solid option for you. And due to the ability to change her NP type, you're gonna have a lot of options. In an actual composition now, basically in a 3-turn environment, we can see the first 2 waves not going to be too hot there, but still 184k neutral is going to get you pretty darn far. So Looking at that on waves 1 and wave 2, maybe a little bit of a concern, but if they are sky attribute, boom, there you go. You're going to pretty much double that number all the way up to 300k. You're definitely going to be doing solid work with her. Wave 3, you get that nice Oberon boost, that synergy with Black Grail plus her overcharge effect, and you are getting up to 412k. These are still neutral numbers in an actual comp. NP1 versus Sky on wave 3, 680k. These are definitely solid numbers. This is definitely neutral looper status. Is it going to be best in game? No. Is it going to be like gotta have? No. But this is definitely going to be a solid option for you guys. Remember, these are single target. So odds are you're not going to have to like single target against a lot of enemies for 3 turns in a row. Comparing, we have Seal. Seal is definitely a unit that a lot of people have rolled. She should be somebody that should be on just about everybody's list to consider. She's not a gotta have, but she is a definitely very strong unit that has really kind of shown her quality here over the past year. So looking at her numbers in comparison, you can see Shiki actually in self buffs only edges her at NP1. Demonic here at 66k. Looking at her here, basically her one-shot damage now, you can get her up to about 487k, still coming in behind Shiki. You can also manage to get the demonic niche out of her for up to 730k, still behind the Sky super effective niche. The difference here that's going to be tough to quantify when we are comparing 2 units is that each of these units has their own unique thing. Seal has the ability to rotate and lock in all 5 of her cards. That is very strong. Similarly, Shiki has the ability to change her NP type mid-combat and be able to do something different. That is also very strong. So it really just depends on what you're after. This is a little bit of an apples to orange comparison, but we knew everybody would be thinking about Seal when talking about the single target comparison on Shiki. So you guys can see, basically here at NP1, you have Shiki still pound for pound beating Seal. Seal's going to have that carding after the fact a little bit kind of advantage. And 487k there on wave 3 will actually surpass Shiki at that point. Why? Well, a lot of that is that Oberon synergy. If you're a Buster unit, you get kind of that double dip. So that is definitely going to be Seal's advantage, though it is interesting to denote this also transfers over to the super effective Sky niche and Demonic niche, as she will still be stronger against a demon than Shiki would be against a Sky attribute. So it is what it is. Shiki in some regards will be stronger and in others will not. But really, ironically enough, where Seal is showing that strength on paper is in the 3 turn. In one shot, she kind of gets beat. In neutral, she kind of gets beat. But that's without factoring in her carding. Taking a look at AoE Shiki now, we will have a comparison for her as well. AoE Shiki has 29k just raw damage output, 44k against Sky attribute, and up to 39k and 59k respectively for NP2. Looking at her one-shot damage, assuming you need an AoE one-shot damage, you're looking at about 286k there, almost 287 at NP1. Sky attribute 473k, and then again, as we are looking at a 3-turn environment, we can see she actually is maybe going to have some issues here with that first wave, as you're going to kind of need to ramp the buffs and stuff that you're giving her. So this will also be a little bit interesting because it will force you to activate the second skill pretty much turn 1. And you guys can see, you get a little bit stronger by wave 2. Wave 3, though, not too strong in terms of raw AoE damage. So this is where I think she maybe could be a little bit on the lacking side. But you guys can see, against Sky Niche, that number, at least the end number there, gonna jump up quite a bit. You're gonna be almost doubling the amount, be at about 401k. Definitely really solid, and definitely gonna be a decent option for a lot of people. The thing I think to take away is that we can see where Shiki is maybe going to fall short is in comparison to some of your more specialized and specific units. And the reason why is going to be because Shiki is adaptable. She has the ability to morph her NP basically into a different type, which means that she probably shouldn't be the best at either type. And we do kind of see that in these comparisons. So let's take a look here. You're gonna actually see our comparison is gonna be to Mermaid Kiara, aka Kiara Moon Cancer. This is double Castoria Oberon, level 100 Black Grail for all this, but just for raw damage output, she's at about 31k, assuming you can land a Bewitchment stack, of which you probably can easily land multiple, so your numbers can get better from here, and 41k at NP2. Comparing back, this just outright wins unless Sky Attribute is in play. Same thing if we are comparing the one-shot damage, 476k is definitely a solid number, and that basically even beats her in Sky Attribute niche. Then comparing the actual 3-turn, you guys can see it's pretty much no contest. So the takeaway here, Shiki is going to be, especially in the AoE department, weaker basically than some of your comparative ones. Still solid damage though. Nothing to like be overly concerned about unless you're dealing with probably the highest level of content, the highest end of nodes, and you're just desperately thinking that that's what you've got to use. To my standpoint, I would say if you're going into that content, either just expect to maybe take a little bit longer with it, or expect to use a more specialized unit that is more custom tailored to actually countering the node, as opposed to Shiki, who is a much more flexible unit as to what she can do. But again, I think that's where Shiki's strength is going to be being flexible, managing to shift your NP type mid-node due to a oddly structured setup. So maybe it's a like 1-1-3 node and Shiki maybe single target loops through, then switches to AoE and handles the final wave. That is where her bread is going to be buttered. That's going to be her real strength, I think, is in those scenarios where she can kind of switch things up and still make do. So let me know what you guys think about Shiki. Which Ascension form is your favorite, and will you be rolling for her if you haven't already? I'll be curious to hear you guys' thoughts, and I will see you guys for the next one. Have a good one. If you haven't already, check me out on YouTube. Go give the channel a follow. Also, don't forget to follow the second channel, the live stream channel, at CAD Plays, if you guys haven't seen it already. And if you're on the Twitch side of things or you're not on the Twitch side of things yet, feel free to follow over here. I will see you guys for the next one, and have a good night and a good weekend if I don't get to see you.